Good morning, K2 meteorologist Kim Castro here. We've got a couple of updates for you as we're watching this line of storms now barreling into the viewing area. We have seen a severe thunderstorm warning now extended into portions of Harris County. It also includes the very little sliver of the southernmost portion of Colorado County. It includes Fort Bend as well, and the westernmost portion of Matagorda County, encompassing right around 130,000 people in our viewing area. And we are watching the progression of the storm. It has slowed down a bit. So right now we're going to take you to radar and show you exactly how it's been progressing over the last 3 hours or so. Taking a loop at the storm there, it's been moving rather quickly over the last few hours at around 40 to 50 miles an hour tracking southeast. And now it is certainly taking a little bit of a pause and pump the brakes a little bit as it's pushing now through the western portion of the viewing area, and in fact getting closer and closer towards the loop right there. The biggest threat with this line that we've been seeing all morning long are some periods of gusty wind, but so far so good in terms of hail reports. And because it has been moving rather quickly, the concern for street flooding has been minimized. We could potentially see a little bit of ponding, some high water spots as this storm's starting to taper off a little bit or slow down in its speed, but for the most part the biggest concern is that it is going to be a little bit loud, a little noisy as it passes through your viewing area, and we could certainly see the potential of some impacts with the wind right there. So we're going to talk about the intensity of these storm cells. In fact, trying to look at how electrically charged they have been. For the most part, it hasn't been a huge concern of ours. The lightning strikes, they've been holding pretty steady over the last few hours. That's what we kind of look at when we're tracking these storms, is to see, has the number gone up over the last few hours? Have those lightning strikes intensified a bit? And for the most part, you'll notice the strikes have held off pretty steady. I'm going to show you exactly what the count has been there over the last 10 minutes or so. And in fact, I'm just going to, there we go, 120 strikes of the last 10 minutes. You can see that number fluctuates a little bit, going down a couple of counts, going up a few counts as well. But for the most part, holding steady at around 100 lightning strikes every 10 minutes or so. And the ratio of negative to positive strikes is pretty proportional. Anytime we see positive strikes really outnumbering those negative strikes, then we know that these thunderstorms are becoming a little bit more robust. They're garnering a little bit more intensity. Positive strikes mean that they're coming from the top of the thunderstorm cell, and that means they have a longer distance to travel. They have a little bit more strength as they reach the ground. Negative strikes means that they're coming from the base of the thunderstorm cell. And so when we see this number pretty matched up, we're not too concerned with that. Anytime we start to notice that these strikes start to deviate from each other a little bit is when we start to kind of pay a little bit closer attention to the progression and the intensification of these storm cells. Let's have a look at those wind speeds like I talked about. That's going to be the main concern when it comes to this line making its way towards your neighborhood. I want to take a closer look at that line is right there. So it is passing through our western counties, now getting into the Katy area, Sugar Land, the Beltway and the Loop. You should feel the impacts of the storm within the next half hour or so. And I want to show you exactly how windy some of those reports have been coming in at. In fact, I'm going to take it back a little bit. Take that zoom out function just a little bit further back. Every now and then it wants to take us a little bit. I'm going to take us home. There we go. So right now we're looking at velocity. So velocity is a good measure of how those wind speeds are moving along. So the red and the green, that's an indication of the direction of the wind, and it's all based on radar. So green means that the wind is moving towards the radar, red means that it's moving away from the radar, and by going inside the storm, we are able to check out how those winds have been holding steady. And for the most part, we have been seeing wind speeds at around 30-40 miles an hour. This is a little bit above the surface level, so we can expect some of those winds to be a little bit more subdued as we get closer and closer towards the ground. So in the Katy area, Some wind speeds at around 36 miles an hour. Sugar Land, just north of there, 26 miles an hour. The Beltway is a little bit calm now, ahead of the main storm system, but we certainly expect some of those wind speeds to start to progress. Let's take you back there to the main line of these storms. It's still quite electrified, especially a little bit further southwest as we go, and that's exactly where those warnings have been issued, those severe thunderstorm warnings. But like I mentioned, the general motion of the storm has kind of taken a little bit of a back seat. So it was pushing rather quickly at around 45, 55 miles an hour. And now we've noticed that the main line has slowed down significantly. It's about half of the speed that it was just about a half hour ago. So let me show you exactly which areas can expect to see the push of the wind as we progress over the next few hours. So there we go. Richmond area, you can expect the main line of storms to pass through your area right around 2:36 within the next few minutes. 2:47, Houston City Center. So Beltway, if you're up, you'll certainly hear this. If you're sleeping, you might be woken up to watch this, and you can understand why we're starting to feel a little bit of a disturbance here as this line pushes through. Brookside Village 301, Baytown 314, Liberty 315, Texas City, and then by the coast by around 4 o'clock in the morning. So the general motion right now, it is pushing east. We're watching the cell that's right over Wharton and getting into Matagorda County. Those are the cells that have been picking up a little bit more intensity and slowed down a little bit. So those are the ones that we'll be watching closely. But for the most part, a lot of this is going to be said and done by the time you are sleeping. We are seeing a little bit of moisture building up behind it, but the main line, that's where we get concerned for some stronger to severe storms. That seems to be tapering as it continues to push out of the viewing area right now. 25 miles an hour going east, and these are the areas that are going to feel likely some gusty wind impacts, definitely some periods of heavier rain as this cell pushes through, and that's going to be the main concern. That's why those areas have been issued a warning, a thunderstorm warning. But for now, wind is going to be the main thing that we're concerned with. And in fact, the forewarned areas have now been lifted. So Colorado, you are no longer in a warning area. A portion of Wharton is under the warning area. Matagorda has been lifted, and a portion of Fort Bend County continues to be in that. And it looks like just the southernmost tip of Harris County might be in a little bit of a warning area too. But for the most part, we're talking about Wharton, we're talking about Fort Bend, and potentially just the borderline of Colorado in a little bit of a risk, and I guess that includes just a little sliver of Austin County as well. So this polygon, this area in yellow, we'll be watching over the next few minutes to see how this storm intensifies, but for the most part, we are going to be watching for some stronger wind potential and then just a little bit of burst of rain. But the good news is no hail reports, so it shouldn't be too loud in that regard. And for the most part, we haven't seen too many couplets. The rotational component, I know I showed you velocity there for a second. And we also look at velocity when it comes to trying to detect some storm motion. So whether or not we start to see a little bit of red in the sea of green. So there's certainly a little bit of rotation, but you'll notice the strength of the storm is right where this polygon has been detected, where the National Weather Service has kind of spotlighted this area as a potential watch point for storm intensification. So in this exact area, we're not seeing, oops, we'll go back there. In that exact area, we aren't exactly seeing any couplets and any rotational components, which would kind of alert us and give us a little bit of a warning to be watching for additional impacts, potentially funnel clouds or things that might have rotational aspects. But for the most part, the forewarned area has, you know, that sea of green. There's no red within it, which means that the storm is working in unison. It's a cohesive system. There aren't any disruptions within the cell that would allow for a vortice to spin up, a rotation. Remember, thunderstorms are a mechanism, a machine that pick up the warm air, cool it, condense it, and dumping wind and dumping rain, but anytime we start to see some shear, some wind working in opposition, that starts to tilt it, and that's when we start to see the potential for some couplets, some spin within the thunderstorm cell that's trying to reach towards the ground. But for the most part, seeing pretty unified wind there. I'm going to actually zoom in there and take us to a little spot that could potentially be a little couplet. Nope, looks like that's just purple, and that's kind of data that the radar is having a little bit of a difficult time kind of identifying. It's the green and the red that definitely gives us a better perspective of what's going on there in this cell. So Conroe, Willis, you aren't under any thunderstorm warning at the moment, although the entire viewing area is under a thunderstorm watch. So we are watching for the potential of these thunderstorms to get a little bit unsettled, but for the most part, we are seeing the thunderstorm do what a thunderstorm does. Come in, pick up the moisture, bring it out, move on. If at any point the thunderstorm starts to grow a little bit past the point of comfort and we start to see the wind pick up and definitely the intensification in terms of electricity, the charge of the thunderstorm, if we see that lightning count go up significantly, we'll definitely cut back in here and let you know that the storm is intensifying and where it's expected to move to next. But for right now, I want to take you to that warned area, which is why we jumped on here just to show you what's been going on. And for right now, Colorado, Fort Bend, a little portion of Harris and Wharton County, all in all about 100,000 people under this severe thunderstorm warning, and that is until 2:45. Now, as the morning progresses, we could potentially see this polygon keep making its push towards the east and to the southeast with the general motion of that thunderstorm. And if that is the case and you are being impacted ahead of this thunderstorm, again, we will be back here on social media. Join us live on the KHOU 11 Morning News, and we will be watching this storm as it exits. For now, I hope you're able to get back to sleep and that the wind doesn't disrupt you as that line of storms passes through.